Well, the first point of the presentation is to speak about the IKEA scene, which is one of the most memorable scenes in the movie, just for some of the interesting things that are going on in it. Uh, Especially the music is interesting in the IKEA scene, which is a sort of blend of a electronic urban beat and some smooth jazz running in the background, or just along with the beat. And this is very close to the sort of background music you could expect in an elevator or in an IKEA store where you would buy this furniture. And I guess that's the way that it relates to the visual elements in the scene.
Oh, yeah, the Easter eggs. There are several Easter eggs in the movie. Four of the Easter eggs are still photos of Tyler Durden. The first one of the four Easter eggs I chose to talk about is in the office where we get a glimpse of Tyler Durden. Yeah, and the second one is in a hall with a little support group with the narrator included. We get a glimpse of Tyler standing next to the support group's team leader. The third one is on a street where we see Marla leave the narrator, and then Tyler Durden he appears. The fourth and last one is at the end of the movie where the skyscraper is falling apart while the narrator and Marla is holding hands. We get a glimpse of Tyler Durden's lower region. If the movie was slowed down, or if people was fast and smart enough, they could get to see the Easter eggs and then know the story before it was told. Yeah.
Yes, and there are several ways this movie sort of points to the fact that it's actually a movie and sort of distinguishes itself from how a book would work if it was just plastered onto the screen directly. And a movie of this sort can be called a metafilm that sort of breaks down the fourth wall between audience and the screen. The first scene consists of Tyler's putting a gun in the mouth of the narrator and asking him, "What do you have to say?" And then he mumbles on the gun, not really getting anything relevant out of him, and they asks him a bunch of questions, and this prompts the flashback that functions as the entire movie. And then, as we finally return to the present, the same question is asked, and sort of the scene repeats itself, and Tyler calls it flashback humor. And it's sort of weird to think about it in the context of the movie itself, how this is just repeated, but the real purpose of repeating it is to sort of bring back the audience and remind them that this is actually the same as the first scene, and it was all just a flashback, and we've returned now. There are also several visual cues that function as Easter eggs as well, just like the glimpses of Tyler that Habisaan went through. And these are also sort of native to the movie environment and couldn't really work in a book. I think the best example is when the narrator first tries to get a hold of Tyler through telecommunication and calls him in a phone booth, but doesn't get a response, so he waits, and then after some time Tyler calls him back, and there's a little note below the phone itself that he's about to pick up, and we zoom into it, and most people won't notice it, but it's a funny little thing that betrays what Tyler really is, that we find out later on in the movie. There's a little note that says no incoming calls, which means that the phone couldn't have rang, and it's only something that Jack sort of imagined in his own head. So if you're really attentive to the movie, you could already figure out at that point that Tyler's only a fiction piece of fiction or a fragment of imagination.
Yes, our next task was to how could we argue that the movie takes up postmodern themes. A crucial theme in postmodernism is the self, and the self is basically a fragmented and split into a variety of endless roles. So basically, you are able to explore, and you have all these opportunities to define yourself. And in the movie, we see Jack having a problem with his alter ego. He's trying to define himself, and he has some sort of identity crisis. And therefore, he's this split personality. Half of him is himself, Jack, and the other half being Tyler Durden, who's just a mental projection. Tyler Durden is exactly what Jack desires to be. And yeah, and another theme in the film we see is the separation of the big city. On one side we have these positive things such as the entertainment and the technology and all these opportunities that are connected with the big city. And on the negative side we see things such as loneliness and violence and materialism taking over. And in the film we, for example, see that though the story progresses in a big city, the main characters, Marla and Jack, they're both mentally disturbed and they're seeking human interaction. So both of them are lonely and they're having some problems. And also the Project Mayhem, which is being formed by Tyler at the end of the movie, is also a anti-materialistic organization which has the purpose to destroy the city. And the last theme I want to talk about is how the men and women have been projected in postmodernism. The man in postmodernism is typically described as the sensual and sensitive man who is modern and soft and somewhere else in his mind. And in the film we see that Jack is also very modern. He has a job and he's living in this big city, but at the same time he's disturbed and mentally he's not well. And a typical woman in postmodernism is described as the aggressive and demonic woman who focuses on her own needs. And the female character in our film, Marla, suits this very well because she's also very aggressive and she's also very disturbed and seeking human interaction. Yeah.
Yes, I'll just go through the characters and some of the informations we have on them. Our main character, the narrator, he is first and foremost a recall specialist in the automobile industry, where he sits on an office and takes paper copies and whatever boring activities his boss makes him do. He hates both the job and the boss. He suffers through this though because of a condition he has, which is insomnia, which makes you unable to sleep for whatever reason. And he often goes several days without even sleeping, and in his own description this creates a veil between him and the rest of the world, where he can't really be touched or touch anything else. There's nothing that's real anymore, and this is really troubling for him. And he gets a recommendation from his doctor which really just turns around his life because of several people. In the testicular cancer support group, Remaining Men Together, as it's called, he meets up with the ex-bodybuilder Bob, who took a lot of testosterone, made lots of estrogen, and therefore now has bitch tests and lots of personal issues, you can imagine. But this man, as they are embracing each other and finally letting out their emotions, actually makes the narrator cry, and he finally feels like he's complete, and he feels this total emptiness, which he wasn't really satisfied with. He wasn't satisfied with this condition before. All this materialism and buying all the IKEA furniture and trying to fill up his life with that didn't make him happy. So So this emptiness that he's now feeling really sort of brings it all together and makes life have meaning. And also another person he meets at these support groups is Marla, and Marla is a faker, just like him, who doesn't actually have a condition, but she meets up with these support groups anyway. She makes his life hell because he can't cry anymore when she's watching him, and she actually gets into a relationship with Tyler. Tyler, the fictional character that the narrator sort of dreams up as a sort of optimal picture of what he wants to be. He's sort of what he strives to be in life is what Tyler is. Sort of a person that doesn't fear the bottom, as they describe it, because they see the meaning in life as trying to reach the bottom and achieve ultimate self-destruction. And Tyler doesn't fear this. He crashes a car on purpose just because he wants to know what it feels like. But also Jack, in the end, sees the wrong of his ways and has to confront Tyler and shoots himself in the head, killing Tyler. It's really sort of a surprising scene. If there's, I guess you could say a little more about Marla. There's especially one scene that's very interesting and I think says a lot about her, or actually several scenes. She tries to cope with her problems in a different way than the narrator. She takes a lot of drugs to try and ease her pain, while the narrator does other self-destructive behavioral things, such as creating the Fight Club and really just trying to let it all out there. Also, the sex scenes that they have really sort of speaks to how Marla is really the only person that we've seen be twisted and deranged enough to actually cope with this dual personality and not really be frightened by it or surprised. I mean, she didn't really question Jack's or the narrator's weird behavior at all. So that's about what I have to say.
Yes, and then we have to comment about the development from the support group to the Fight Club to the Project Mayhem. As Alexander said, he suffers from insomnia, so he seeks medical treatment, but the doctor tells him to visit support group for men who suffer from testicular cancer. And the purpose of these support groups is to get a feeling of more content with the existence and to have interaction with other people. And then when one day Tyler and Jack, they meet and having their first fight at a bar, they attract a group of men, and with agreement with the bartender, they turn the basement into a fight club, and Tyler dubs the group and gives the name Fight Club actually. And the main rule, he says, is to never talk about it at any point with anyone. And somehow the Fight Club has the same purpose as the the support group had, because here this fighting somehow functions as a spiritual awakening for the men. It just reminds them that they're alive and that they're seeking interaction with other people, and instead of all these materialistic values. And when this Fight Club expands and it gets a lot more members, Tyler suddenly forms this Project Mayhem, which, as I said before, has the purpose of destroying the city, which is a symbol of materialism. And as soon as Jackie realizes that Marla is the one who he has been looking for all his life, and he doesn't want to destroy the city, the line between him and Tyler actually is being blurred, and it turns out that Jack and Tyler is actually the same person. So yeah, and throughout the film, the support group and the Fight Club and the Project Mayhem, they all three have the same purpose of give people a spiritual awakening from this materialistic world and somehow find the real meaning in life.